Talk to us about the border restrictions. Maybe remind us where they stand right now. Right now, it's not essential travel. And what's ahead?
That's right. So right now, only essential workers are going back and forth across the border. That would include truck drivers carrying goods and services, produce, for example. Also includes healthcare workers are able to go back and forth across the border. So those restrictions are going to stay in place. Notably, one of the restrictions as well, one of the changes as a result of this this tightened border, is that any migrants that irregularly cross, and irregular is the term meaning someone is basically walking across a farmer's field, or the big one, of course, is they call Roxham Road in Quebec, is it's not an official border crossing. It's just somebody trying to come into Canada by literally walking across a field. In normal circumstances, if that individual then says, I'd like to declare refugee status, there's a process by which they would stay in Canada and they'd be processed and eventually be dealt with. Well, because of this tightened border, we are now just sending those people straight back to the United States. You're not going to hang around in Canada. You're not staying here. That procedure of turning people back right away, that's actually something that pre-pandemic, conservatives have been calling on for quite a while. They wanted to change the agreement that we have with the United States about people who try to come from the U.S. and claim refugee status. If you come to a regular border crossing, I know it sounds a little confusing, in pre-pandemic times, and you try to declare yourself as a refugee, if you come from the United States, you're at an airport, you're at Niagara Falls, something like that, you also get turned around. So anyhow, that's sort of a bit of a big deal, so that people cannot be walking into the country and thinking that they can get access to any kind of services here for a period of time. So that's going to stay in effect till June 21st. But the PM was also asked, well, how long is this border restriction going to take? When can we start accepting international travelers? When can Canadians perhaps expect to see family members coming across the Canadian-U.S. border? His response at this time was, we're taking it pretty much day by day, week by week. It's going to depend on how successful we are reopening. It's going to depend on the recommendations of health authorities.
Eric, what else did you get out of the Prime Minister's address in terms of the border reopening and the delaying it for 30 days? What else do you think that means for us and the United States?
Well, it certainly buys time for Canada. If you think about it, there are two main issues. He alluded to that, where you're trying to find the right balance between the economy and healthcare and safety. For Canada, the issue is more about the health and safety side of it at this point. If you think about the provinces that have been most opposed to opening the border, it's been Ontario, it's been BC. If you think about the U.S. states where they have had a lot of COVID-19 cases, it is New York State and Michigan. These are the two main states right next to Ontario. Washington had the big outbreak initially right next to British Columbia. So there is concern about the Americans coming across from a healthcare point of view. On the economic side, this is something that Canada relies on so much for the U.S. Like the percentage of importance for the economic boon that we get from Americans coming across the border and spending their money here is far greater than it matters to the United States. We do have there is this possibility that Donald Trump is not that open to outsiders coming into the country anyway. So for the moment, they're on the same page. They're not reopening the border. But there will be pressure to do so economically, and then those questions all arise. Well, if Americans are coming across the border and they're vacationing and they have 2 weeks, are they going to be under a rule that says now you have to isolate for 2 weeks? I mean, there's a lot to be worked out that's going to be complicated when this finally happens. But as the Prime Minister said, we've bought another month before we have to make any hard decisions on that.
And, just worth mentioning, there are still people who are Canadians who are south of the border who are still trying to get back home and are dealing with canceled flights as they try to come back to Canada, since the flight situation keeps changing as the border situation does.